So I want to tell you a story. You know the best-selling self-help book of all time, Think and Grow Rich, has like 15 million copies sold. It's a pretty important book by a lot of people's regards. If you don't, let me paint a picture for you. So what the book is about this guy named Napoleon Hill. And he goes and sits down with the richest man in the world. Picture Jeff Bezos, except in a Scottish version named Andrew Carnegie. And if Jeff Bezos was allowed to shoot his employees. This is essentially the guy that he went to talk to. And he went to talk to him and based his entire book off this conversation where Andrew Carnegie challenged him to make it his life's work to go and collect all the secrets and the knowledge from the world's smartest, most successful men and put in a book to give to the masses so they too could know the secrets of successful rich men. And so Napoleon Hill dug down deep and did just that. He went around the world for his entire life, interviewing super successful people and talking to them and befriending them and finding out exactly how to tick. And all these super successful people told him their secret. And he was able to put it down into a 10-step, 12-step system that the average man could follow and finally know how these titans of industry worked. Doesn't that sound like an amazing life goal? What an altruistic guy. The only problem with all of that is all these people he interviewed and talked to in his book, there's no evidence of them ever meeting. And the conversation that he had with Andrew Carnegie, which I believe was 1908, Napoleon Hill was actually on the run from the authorities for committing mass fraud in lumber, I believe, at the time. It might have been fraud. He was definitely on the run for fraud for something. So I doubt that the Jeff Bezos of this time would stop what he was doing to talk to a guy who's running from felony charges. Now, I just want to state that's just what I've read from people that are experts on Andrew Carnegie and Thomas Edison and looked into the research behind this. You can draw your own conclusion, but I think the overall conclusion is that there's some smelly bullshit about this. And I don't want to talk about that today. I want to talk about bullshit. So let's discuss. So, like always, this is going to take me about 5 minutes to wrap up, and if you don't have 5 minutes because you want to go watch the latest Sonic, did you guys see the Sonic trailer? That's one ugly, ugly creature. But if you don't have 5 minutes to go watch the Sonic trailer, then you're probably going to get blindsided by bullshit in the worst possible kind, which is what I'm going to talk about today. I'm going to talk about it because it's been getting my goat for a while, but I didn't have the words put in order. And that's what I'm going to do. So, the past few weeks, actually the past month, I've been digging super into self-help and then super duper into the biggest scams and frauds in history and just bullshitters. And this kind of resonated with me just a little bit because personally in my life, I've had hundreds of thousands of dollars stolen from me. I've been conned. I've had employees steal from me. I've literally been conned by a guy who I believe from all the evidence is coming out lied about every part of his life. Quite embarrassing. And I've also been going and looking into Theragen and Bernie Madoff and the 2008 housing collapse and the dot-com boom. And even when I was digging through self-help, I was going through all these books with all these people and they're talking about how our brain works and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, well, I wonder what happens if I go and dig into some of these people's histories. And it's just kind of bonkers. Not all of them. Not all of it's bullshit. And I'm just going to say a lot of stuff in some of these books is super duper helpful. But it's pretty damn goofy. I'll just leave it at that. And I was thinking about this, and the reason why I wanted to make this video is because I was thinking, man, people are nuts. But that's not really the problem here. Because you can blame this all on people that take advantage all day long. But the bigger problem is with this. Usually the people that get conned the most are the smartest people. It's just absolutely shocking because with Bernie Madoff, all you had to do was call up his investment account ID. That's not the technical term for that, but you could literally just call up and say, hey, has this guy been making trades? And you could just see, no, he wasn't. With Theragen, for example, had a $9 billion valuation. When nobody walked inside the building and just checked to make sure that they actually could do anything that they were saying they were going to do. If you look at the 2008 housing collapse, all you had to do was just do a little bit of research into the bonds that were being sold. And with the likes of Napoleon Hill, it took me about 5 seconds of research for this to happen. Even in the things where I've messed up in the past and been screwed over, it would have taken me about 3 seconds to figure out. But I didn't. So the bigger problem, and the reason why I'm making this video, is because no one has the capability to bullshit us like ourselves. And I think one of the number one best ways to be successful in business is to recognize when you are bullshitting yourself. And what I will do to myself and what other people I see do themselves is we'll use the tactics of the world's greatest bullshitters on ourselves. And we're so good at it. And if you can recognize these things, it gives you a place of real power, because if you understand the truth of yourself, it gives you really intense power over yourself and the results you can get. And that in turn gives you a lot of power in the real world. And so what I want to do is talk about 5 things that I've learned that I think can change your life, because they've changed my life and they've helped me out a whole lot. So let's just get started. So one thing I found that was just fucking hilarious. Everybody credits Darwin with the theory of evolution, when it was actually another guy. Another guy figured out evolution, and then Darwin slapped his name on top of it with a slightly different theory and then took credit for it. And if you go look at the story of Copernicus, this guy basically figured out that the sun was actually in the middle of the universe instead of Earth, and he wasn't allowed to tell anybody for the longest time until he died, because the churches would have prosecuted him, because that's against the word of God. You're not allowed to do that. And so many forms of science were just blocked by the church. And then on the other regard, in science in general, stuff that's been completely evidence-backed has just been completely smashed by the scientific community, because they view it as like a religion. This happens all over the place. For example, in the Human Genome Project, this was started by corporations because they realized that once you mapped all the human genes, you could make tons and tons of pharmaceutical drugs around each gene that change how people work. And so they got taxpayers and people to pay for it. Then they got the results. Then they copyrighted the results. And then they used that to sell pharmaceutical drugs that have a literal worse effect on you than a placebo. Like placebos tracked result-based get a much better result for you, because the placebo effect is pretty damn powerful, than the pharmaceutical drugs they're making, and they know these things. And so what I'm trying to point out right here is that the way things are fucking stupid. Everything that we look at is not usually correct. Human beings are wrong just about everything. And so what I'm trying to point out right here is that in our lives, one of the easiest things for us to fall back into is that, oh, no, this is how it is. It's just right. This is just how things are going to be. Starting a business, oh, it's super risky. It's super hard. You have to have tons of money to do it. Oh, being a professional speaker, you have to have this, and that. So many beliefs that we build upon don't exist in any way, shape, or form. Even the most core beliefs we have, like doctors help us live longer, or time is an actual thing. That's a funky one. You should look into that. They're not true. And a lot of times, people push these things forward because they like their view of the world, and so they force enough other people to have their view of the world with them, and then what happens is that everybody believes something that's completely not true, like the sun not being the center of the universe. And so the first thing you need to stop telling yourself, and yeah, I put a hoodie on because it got a little chilly in here, is when you start to doubt yourself, when you start to move forward in your life, don't fall back on the number one bullshit tactic of all time. Well, a lot of people believe this. What a lot of people believe, like that Darwin made evolution, or that Napoleon Hill met all these super successful people. Allegedly, he did. Allegedly, I don't know either way. Or that doctors are here to make you feel better. Did you know doctors were some of the first people that pushed cigarettes because they said it was healthy? So when you start going and think about starting a business or becoming an entrepreneur or pursuing what you want to do in life, the number one way we love to bullshit ourselves is the number one way that everybody bullshits everything. And then the only person who really knows the truth is the king bullshitter who has covered up the truth. And so don't cover up the truths from yourself. Be the person that goes and tests things for themselves. Now, of course, don't go jump off a cliff. If someone tells you, oh, you don't know if you jump off the cliff, something bad's going to happen. But don't let, because a lot of other people believe it, make you believe it or behave in that way. Because in the most basic of basics in human history, we've been completely fucking wrong about the most basic stuff. And this is so important because when I'm talking to people that want to become entrepreneurs or people that want to get started doing anything in their life that they're intimidated by, the number one question I get many times is, Alex, how do you believe in yourself? Or how do you get over that initial fear of getting started? How do you go and get past your insecurities and have faith in yourself? And the bigger question is, what beliefs do you have that stop you from doing that? And if you look at most of the beliefs that have been passed on from people, for example, did you know most surgeries, if you go and fake a surgery, the person gets the same result as the surgery? I'm not joking. Most surgeries are completely not needed. Most surgeries that people will go under for will get a better result whether the surgery happens or not, because they just believe the surgery happened. This has been proven time and time over again. So a lot of surgeries that happen don't need to happen. People are going under the knife because They believe in what other people say. And the reason why you don't have confidence in yourself is very similar to these surgeries. It's because you believe what other people say about whatever you're about to pursue. And I'm not saying that the entire world is full of nonsense. I'm not saying that people are trying to bullshit you. I'm just saying humans are incorrect way more than they are correct. It's shocking about the most basic things. So you could actually just choose to recklessly believe in yourself, and you're probably going to be right more times than you're wrong, because if you listen to other people, you're usually going to be wrong. So the first way you must stop bullshitting yourself is by somehow justifying your decisions because other people believe in those decisions or other people think those decisions are correct. Most of the time, they are not. And if you're basing it off of that, you're going to have a horrible, horrible track record of decision making. And the reason why we use this excuse most of the time to comp out of doing things, to bullshit ourselves, is the second thing I want to talk about. And that is how we must always find ways to avoid pain. Look, the reason why people's credit card bills get racked up so high, and I've done this in the past. Now, fortunately, lucky for me, I have money to pay my credit card bills, but I'll just not go look in the account. Or I won't go and investigate things that I find to be a little bit painful. Or when for example, when I've dealt with employees in the past that have stole from me, or I've hired people that are full of shit, or I've spoken with people that are full of shit and been tricked by them, every single time, it didn't come from the person being a genius. It didn't come from this information not being readily available to me. It came from me not going and investigating pain. And one of the ways that we love to bullshit ourselves is that when we feel pain, we go and focus on things that are not painful. And it's not like we're actually telling ourselves a lie. We know it's there. We know the problem is there. We just don't look because we don't want to know the answer. And this is something that I think 99% of people suffer from. And I suffer from this to a certain extent. Even really smart, successful people suffer from a certain extent. So I'm not up here saying I'm holier than thou. What I am saying is that if you don't recognize this and know how to dig in the pain in your life, it doesn't matter because that pain is eventually going to come and find you. The truth is always going to come and find you. What I see so many people do is they know the truth. They know where the pain is, and instead of going and looking at it, they kept pushing it under the rug. And then 10 years later, it comes out as something unbearably nasty that they can't deal with, or it's too late to deal with. And it becomes a big problem when things don't have to become big problems if you just look into them. And the perfect example of really smart people doing this themselves, billionaires doing this themselves, Bernie Madoff. They went into his fund, and he wouldn't explain how his fund worked. He wouldn't explain it in any way, shape, or form. He'd even chastise people when they wouldn't go into the firm because they wouldn't understand how it worked. And if you don't know what it was just a Ponzi scheme. So, for example, a person would go and put in $100 million, and then what Bernie Madoff would do was take a lot of that money and then have someone else invest $100 million and give that first guy $15 million and say, I just got you a 15% return. And he'd just do that over and over and over again. And the only way shit like this can really go on is if people won't go and investigate the pain. People had all this money coming in, but there was something in their head, these billionaires and 100 millionaires, they could have gone, maybe I should look into this. And it's the same thing with you in your life. If you feel this little nagging uncomfortableness, this nagging little insecurity about something, this nagging little pain, and something that makes you kind of feel a little bit cold when you think about it, you should probably look into it. Because you're going to convince yourself 9 ways to hell to never look at it. And if you do that, hell is going to come find you. So just don't do it. Whenever you feel a little bit of pain, when you think about something, that's a sign that you must dig into it. Don't bullshit yourself. Just go look. The next way that we love to bullshit ourselves is we like to act like we don't understand how the world works. It's just kooky to me. Rule number 1 of the world and the financial system is you must give value to get value. And whenever in history, you want to look at all the economic collapses, it's when someone was really breaking this rule and a lot of people were expecting a lot of value for nothing. In fact, if you just want to see a depression or a collapse coming, just look for a bunch of idiots expecting a lot of value for nothing. It's when all of society gets in on a big old scam that everything goes to hell. If you look at the 2008 housing collapse, people were making money for nothing. People were getting houses for nothing. Everything about it reeked of utter nonsense. And the people that were going and selling these bonds were getting paid for these bonds that were being rated by people that were falsely rating them. And so what happened is people were making money for nothing. And everybody in the whole entire circle was making money. They all just imagined in their head, oh, this is how the world fucking works. This is how the world works. And yeah, there's a few people knowing this is not how the world works, but I'm going to get in and I'm going to make money right now. But most people in it, the banks, the people buying the bonds, the people investing, the people getting homes, everybody's just like, I'm just going to live in la la land right now. And what happened? Every single person got burned, except for a few people like the banks who got bailed out by the government. They could take all the risk without any of the downside, which is kind of nonsense, but I'm not here to complain about that. The problem is, when I go and hop on live streams, when I go and talk to a lot of people who are thinking about starting a business, people have the same mindset. Remember when Bitcoin came around? Everyone gets super excited when they can get something for nothing. And we all know that's not how the world works. We all know this. And the second this rule is violated, something bad happens. And it usually happens to the people who are wanting the most for nothing. So when you're going into your business, when you're starting a business, and something seems too easy, you don't have to make any sacrifice. When things are coming too easily to you, it's probably time to get out. When you see a bunch of people crowding around something where it's way too easy, it's probably time to look back in your head and look at how the world actually works. And don't deceive yourself. When you're going and looking for a business model to start, I always see, what's the easiest way to make this much money working 2 hours a day? What type of decisions do you think you're going to make when you're trying to seek that out? Do you think you're going to be the person who sees people trying to get something for nothing and finds a way out of it? Do you think you're going to be the person who's long-time successful? Or do you think you're going to be the person who goes for easy, goes for value for nothing, and gets burned over and over and over again? This isn't some rule that you can break and get away with. It always comes back. And so, in your business and in your life, don't move towards easy. Move towards hard. Move towards the thing where you have to give so much value to get value in return. Because once you're doing that, you know you're very close to the truth. And just like the clients of Bernie Madoff, you know when this shit is happening. You know, you see it clear as day. And a lot of times it's just easier to keep focusing on the easy results that are coming in instead of looking underneath the hood. For example, in my business all the time, there's been points where I'm killing it. It's coming in way too easily. And instead of going and doubling down on my business and getting more paranoid about my business, I'm just like, okay, cool, we're just going to ride this out and let it coast. Well, eventually, then someone comes and steals my cookie. Someone comes and makes a better ad. If you rely on easy, you will always get burned. So stop deceiving yourself with easy. Stop deceiving yourself that you can ever consistently get value for easy. It's not going to happen. And when you're doing this, it often comes down to not knowing yourself and just letting yourself be an undisciplined goof troop. And this also ties into the next part, which is most people that I see starting businesses or trying to do anything with their life, they don't know their true motives. So, for example, when I started my first business, I know for a fact that my true motives was originally desperation and anger. So when I started my business out of the Air Force, I couldn't be there any longer. So I was desperate and I was angry and I wanted to prove everybody else wrong. Those were my motives. And so I'm like, fuck the world, fuck all these people I work for. I'm not doing this anymore. That was my big entrepreneurial moment. It didn't come from me wanting to be some Elon Musk or Steve Jobs. I wasn't reading a book and saying, I want to be Steve Jobs. No, I was like, fuck this. I'm going to make this money and I'm going to be financially free and I'm going to prove every single person on planet Earth wrong. And so that was what I thought was my true motives. And that was my true motive probably about 6 months into it. And then when I had my first $1 million year, I didn't know what my motives were. And I thought it was just, I'm a talented entrepreneur and I just make money. And it's very ugly to actually dig into your true motives. And so what you see a lot of people do is they go and make their first money. And then they start buying cars. They start trying to get famous on the internet. This is something I see so many young entrepreneurs do. They make their first $1 million and they're like, step 2, get 1 million followers on Instagram. Why does this happen? Step 2, get a Lamborghini. Step 2, pose next to a private jet. Step 2, go and start spending money and showing off to people and go and start building up this big old image of myself that really has nothing to do with me. And they keep telling themselves, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? It's because I'm an entrepreneur and this is how an entrepreneur lives. They're not an entrepreneur. That has nothing to do with building a business. And they keep telling themselves that, the reason why I'm building this business is because I'm doing something for the world. All right, I'm making the world better. No, it's not. A lot of people don't know that their true motives are just avoiding fear and massive insecurity. And when you don't know these things, you go down this rabbit hole. So for example, I see all sorts of entrepreneurs. They start a business and their first initial things get them that first success, and then they get very warped because they don't understand how to recognize their motives. And so instead of building a business that gives them fulfillment, where even if you didn't make money, you'd still be happy, that's the true Zen. That's the true north. Once you have that, you can't lose. Even if you lose all your money, you're still winning because you're working on something that makes you happy. But instead, because they don't recognize their motives, they don't recognize their mental problems going on, they go down this route over here of insecurity and ego. And so they start not getting fulfillment from their business, which can give them long-term fulfillment, their life's work. They start getting fulfillment from a car. They start getting fulfillment from their social media image and the how many cool people they hang out with and all these things that really have nothing to do with them and don't provide long-lasting fulfillment, so you just keep having to do them. And then the craziest thing about this, the more you focus on these things, the more your business dies, and so then you end up losing these things. Like every NFL player or all the people that you see go bankrupt in their business, they focus too much on these things, and then they lose all these things, and then their entire self-worth, their entire view of themselves is destroyed because they attach their self-image to these things because they never understood where their motives were. Their motives were never to build a great business. Their motives were never to build and find their life's purpose. It was always to fill the void of insecurity. So that's just one thing that I've seen a lot. That's one thing that I've fallen into. And you need to sit down and stop bullshitting yourself on why you're doing certain things. If you can actually sit down and recognize why you're doing certain things and say, that's incorrect, that's goofy. What I need to always be searching for is fulfillment, something that I would do for free, something that makes me happy regardless of the results. And when you have that, you're going to move towards a business that you absolutely love or a life's work that you absolutely love, and you're going to get really good at it. And you're probably going to get really rich doing it because you're really good at it. And if you don't know this, you're going to end up going into businesses to make money, and you're not going to be good at those businesses because all you're trying to do is make money. And then you're not going to be fulfilled because all you're trying to do is make money. And so you're going to wonder why you're not happy, and then you're going to say, oh, it's because I don't have enough things. I don't have enough bullshit. And you're going to bullshit yourself, and you're going to go get those things, and then those things aren't going to make you happy, so you're going to have to get more things, and eventually you're going to lose all those things, and you're going to feel terrible. That's the only two ways it goes. So you must know your motivation, so stop bullshitting yourself. And then finally, the last way you must stop bullshitting yourself is you must start recognizing fear in yourself. Most people, including you, including myself, I hope not, I try to work on this, are ruled by fear. Every decision that we have is ruled by fear, but we act in certain, we are amazing at covering it up. So, for example, in the past, when I was building one of my businesses, I had tons of money coming in. I could have built my software company that's really my life's work, my purpose right now. I could have built that 6 years ago. Okay, easy, had the money coming in. I could have learned all the lessons and all the things I need to build and be worth $100-200 million right now, but I'm not, because my decisions were based around fear and not growth. And let me give you an example of that. So basically, I have like $200,000 a month coming in, and I'm skimping on investing in my business. I'm skimping on hiring developers. I'm skimping on hiring as much support as I need. And why do I do that? I say, oh, it's because I'm being financially smart. Bullshit. That's one little tiny example that you might do in your life. You will go and avoid fear and then give yourself a pat on the back for doing it. And what happens when you do this is you keep making fear-based decisions. And really, the reason why I was making those decisions wasn't because I wanted to be financially frugal and smart. It was because I attached my self-worth to my bank account. And my biggest fear was having zero again and going back to zero and being weak again. But because I wouldn't face that fear and just sit down and think about it, I kept making these fear-based decisions and then putting them as smart decisions. And the reason why this is so deadly is because if your entire focus is based around keeping what you have, this paranoia of loss, this fear of going backwards, you're going to focus on staying where you're at. And if you're focused on staying where you're at, you can't focus on moving to where you want to go. So if you have 100 points of effort, like I talked about in other videos, and 80% of your effort and thoughts is focused on staying where you're at right now, well, guess what? You're not going to go very far. Whereas if you have a person who 90% of what he's focused on is going forward, that person's going to go forward at lightning speed because he doesn't have fear. And so what you need to do is you need to look at why you're afraid in the first place. And you need to identify those fears because you're going to keep making decisions based on fear until you recognize what the fears are. Most people's fears are people looking down on them, losing friends, being embarrassed from people. How do you get rid of that fear? You cut those people out of your life or you stop caring. Most people's fear is financial turmoil because they attach their self-worth to their financial success or the things they own. You want to know how to get rid of that fear? Get rid of all the things you own. You want to make it where it's like you're going to Vegas and you're putting a $100 chip down, and if you lose nothing because money's worthless to you. And you really need to think about it. If in the grand scheme of life, financials are not determined by where you're at right now. They're determined by where you end at, or your average sum, or whatever. Nobody judges Luke Skywalker by who he was in the beginning of A New Hope. They judge Luke Skywalker by who he was at the Return of the Jedi, and hopefully ignore what happened in The Last Jedi. You can't judge Luke off of that, or you're going to have a real depressing view of Luke Skywalker. Anyways, in those movies, the person is judged by the end result. And so, if you are going in your life and working on something that gives you true fulfillment and happiness, and you're broke right now and you lose a few times, but you get to spend the next 30 years of your life working on something that gives you true fulfillment and happiness, you've won, regardless of the money coming in. And if you fail for 5 years, but after 5 years you're a multimillionaire, you still win. And the only thing holding you back from that's logical. That makes so much sense. Everybody's like, yeah, duh. But the only thing holding you back from that is the fear of loss. And so until you address the fear of loss, you can't really move forward. You can't really become that Luke Skywalker who grows from a person that's nothing into something great because you're focused on staying nothing. And so what you must do to move forward is first you need to recognize something that even if it didn't pay off would be worth it, would be worth your life, would be worth, it's your purpose. It's the thing that gives you fulfillment. And then once you have that thing, you need to find ways to eliminate every downside. You need to hedge your bets in a way that you don't care if you lose. It's like showing up for the football game and all you're focused on doing is playing the game. Because once you do that, once you're focused on playing the game to the best of your abilities, you're probably going to start winning. So what you must do is you must go and say, all right, so how can I hedge my bets? And the easiest way to hedge your bets is to have no loss, no way to lose. You could just keep going and putting 100 chips down and keep losing money because, yeah, you can keep making that money to keep putting 100 chips down to keep taking those shots, but if you lose, it doesn't really matter to you. Your lifestyle doesn't change. So if you're afraid of financial loss, go live super cheaply. Go move to a third world country. Go live in a super cheap apartment in a college town that costs $250 a month. Split an apartment with a bunch of guys in college town. Easy, boom, $200 a month rent. $250. I think that's what I paid. I think I paid $300 a month when I lived in College Station. And so remove all the downsides so that you can keep taking shots at the stuff that matters. Because if you operate off these fears, your entire life becomes revolving around these fears. It becomes revolving and sacrificing your purpose and the thing that gives you fulfillment to answer to your fears. Until you sit down and look at those things, until you stop bullshitting yourself and not accepting that you're afraid and then attacking those fears, you can't move forward. Because if your decisions in your life are based around fear, if your ruling emotion is fear, you are never going to move forward into courage and belief in yourself. That's just how it is. And so, to wrap it all up, guys, I just wanted to share this because after digging into everything I've looked at and looking at all sorts of different types of people and all sorts of problems in the world, look, there's people out there that will take advantage. There's problems in the world. There's problems with the entire society's belief system. There's a lot of stuff out there just complete and utter bullshit. But those things aren't that dangerous to you. And while you might get knocked down a few times by this nonsense, it's really never going to be something that holds you back your entire life. It just isn't. The only bullshitter in the world that is most capable of wrecking your entire life and is more seductive and more persuasive than anything else in the outside world is going to be you. And that's the problem, because most people are out there shining the light everywhere saying everyone else is bullshit. Well, their entire life, all they're buying is bullshit from the number one liar in their entire world, themselves. And so, I encourage you to take that light, stop shining it everywhere else, just shine it back on yourself. It's going to make you really powerful. So just do that.